In this video, I want to demonstrate the cheat that Parzival used in the book Ready Player One, and to show you another one that he should have used as well. Ernest Cline's debut novel Ready Player One came out in 2011 and is full of 1980s references from video games to music to movies. It takes place in a futuristic dystopia where virtual reality is widespread through a program called the Oasis. If you haven't read it yet, you should, because it's a great book, and there will be spoilers in this video, so beware. The main character Parzival has to clear different gates and find keys in the Oasis using his and his friends' immense knowledge of the 80s. During the final task, he needs to play Tempest and beat the current high score of just over 728,000 before the Sixers do. He uses the 40 credit cheat to be able to play more than one game, which I'll demonstrate on my machine. But first, I'll give you a brief tour of the important modifications to my machine and things to note about Tempest machines in general. This is my original Tempest machine I bought from an arcade going out of business in 1986 for $200. This was a mainstay of my arcade experience in the early 1980s, when Tempest was the most exciting thing in the arcades, as its technology was mind-blowing, especially to an 11 to 12-year-old like me. So I'll also be reliving my nostalgia from those days. In another video, I'll do a more in-depth tour of my particular Tempest machine and some of the modifications I've done over the years, including replacing the vector monitor and installing a kit that allows me to play 8 versions of the game on this machine. But the ability to run all 3 versions of the released Tempest ROMs is what's important for this video. The key is, these cheats only work with the first revision of the ROM. This is the Tempest mainboard, or the brains of the machine. It's basically a dedicated computer designed to run only Tempest. It contains a CPU, memory, sound and video hardware, and game code in a series of ROM chips. Atari fairly quickly fixed the bug that was causing the 40 credit backdoor. Here you can see the onboard ROM chips more clearly. By the time I bought this machine in 1986, it already had revision 3 of the ROM installed. The Vector Labs kit will allow me to bypass this later version and run the revision 1 ROM to demonstrate these cheats. Since these cheats don't work in free play mode, you have to make sure the machine is set to accept credits for play. This is done via several switches on the main board and daughter board shown here. You can set all sorts of gameplay features with these switches, including easy, medium, or hard difficulty, starting number of lives, bonus lives, etc. Now I'm ready to demonstrate the cheats. This machine is set to use revision 1 ROMs, so the first thing to do is to add some credits. Here I'm simulating dropping coins in the front slot by just moving the small switch that gets triggered when a coin or token is dropped through the slot. The nice click you hear is the play counter increasing. Here's the counter so you can see the total increase when I simulate this. This machine has recorded over 14,000 paid games, most of which would have been from when this particular machine was in the arcade from 1981 to 1986. I typically keep the machine on free play though, so this counter never increases. Now in the book, Artemis informs Wade that he can get 40 free credits by dying on a score of 06, 11, or 12 after his score is already 180,000 points. That's mostly accurate, but it's a bit more complicated than that. While it's possible to execute the cheat with a single credit like was done in Ready Player One, because it's based on score, I didn't really know the details back in the early 1980s, so I'm going to duplicate exactly what I used to do back then, which is actually a bit faster but takes 2 credits to complete. The easiest and most reliable way to execute these cheats is to get to and clear level 24, the red V-shaped playfield. Typically you can only start on level 9, so there is some level of skill required to be able to play through this far. I'll do that here, but I'll spare you the 6 or 7 minutes it takes me to clear all those levels. Here I am about ready to clear level 24. Now that it's cleared, on the next game I can start on that level. That's key because the bonus score it rewards puts the machine right where it needs to be for all these magic cheats to work. Just kill yourself quickly here and restart a new game on level 24. Or, to use only 1 credit, you need to play until you reach over 173,000 and also follow these rules. After clearing level 24 again, the score will be around 193,000. This is right in the sweet spot for the cheats to work. Now it's a matter of getting the last 2 digits of the score to specific numbers for different things to happen. For the 40 credit cheat, the scores I knew of back in the 1980s were 11 and 12. It also works with several others, as Artemis mentioned. Just take your time and get the last 2 digits of the score to 11 or 12. A single shot on a spike will be 2 points, unless it's the very last bit of a spike, which is worth 1. This makes it easy to change from an even to odd score or back by just clearing an entire row of spikes. That technique will be more important for the level select cheat, but for this one, it's pretty easy to get either 11 or 12 as the final digits. Now with the proper score, just let yourself die and enter something in the high score table. Now you just have to wait for the attract screen to start. This was the most suspenseful part of the process back in the day. I remember the first time it worked for me in the arcades, and it was almost a magical feeling. But I also remember later on when it no longer worked as machines were being updated with the fixed ROMs. During that transition time, you never really knew if you'd get lucky and be playing on an original version or not. And there's that magical sound of the credits being applied and the counter going up to 40. Actually, this cheat really adds over 100 credits, but the maximum the machine can handle is 40, even if you inserted that much real money. You can see the play counter clicking up very fast and increasing by 112 credits in this example. The number of credits rewarded is actually not consistent, and sometimes it gives you a different number, probably based on score in some way, but it's always more than 40, which is enough to max out the credits of the machine. Now you can play free all day in the arcades as a preteen in the early 1980s. So in the book, Parzival executes this cheat in order to get more than one chance to beat Halliday's high score. He also mentions that Halliday put the machine on tournament settings, which doesn't allow him to start past level 9 with a 54,000 point bonus. While it's true that Twin Galaxies has a tournament setting competition that doesn't allow you to start past level 9, the machine itself doesn't prevent you from doing it. It's an artificial constraint for that specific record. Instead of taking hours to play multiple games to play from level 9 to 81, Parzival should have used the level select cheat to be able to start on level 81, and he would have beaten the Sixers in a matter of minutes. The level select cheat is similar to execute as the 40 credit cheat and is key to quickly getting very high scores. Tempest's progressive level start system means that the higher level you clear, the higher level you can start on your next game. The bonus reward for the next game is always more than the points you get by clearing all the earlier levels first. There are 16 unique shapes to the playfield tubes. Every 16 levels, the tube color changes and becomes more difficult than the previous set. The first levels are blue, then red, yellow, cyan, black, or invisible, and finally green starting on level 81, which is the highest level you can start on for a bonus of 898,000. If you play from level 1 to 81, your score will be around 600,000. If you start on level 81 and clear the level, your score will be over 900,000. So it's definitely the best way to get the highest score possible, not to mention saving the time necessary to clear all those levels along the way. For the level select cheat, start on level 24, the red V, to be in that same key range of scores where these cheats work. This time, instead of a final score of 11 or 12 like for the 40 credits, the magic number is 46. This is a little harder to do because there's no odd score that will do the trick, so sometimes you need to change the score from odd to even by hitting specific enemies. Here, my score isn't quite high enough, so I first need to get over 193,000. Now I'm going to try and get the score to have the final 2 digits of 46. The only real trick is when you need to switch your score from odd to even, which I have to do a couple different times here by clearing the final bits of a spike on a tube column. Don't worry about dying in the process, and sometimes it's easier to die on purpose when you're close to the desired score. This is because there are fewer enemies on the screen when you first restart, and the risk of shooting something you don't want to hit is less. Once you get the correct score, let yourself die and enter anything in the high score table. This time you have to wait until the attract mode completes a level before you can start your new game. If you start the next game too early, the cheat won't work, and you'll only be able to start on level 24 again, where you could try again. So wait until this attract level is complete. Immediately press the start button, and now you can start on any level all the way up to 81. I'll play through the first green level here just so you can see the bonus and get a feel for the gameplay, but I'll leave a high score and attempt for a later video. These green levels are definitely the hardest in the game as they are very fast, so patience is the key. And there we go, bonus of 898,000, and now you're on your way to taking over all the high scores on the machine in the arcade back in the early 80s, or finding the Easter egg in the Oasis. From start to finish, this entire process took me about 11 minutes, so if Parzival did this cheat after using the single game 40 credit cheat that he did, he still could have done this in under 20 minutes, saving the hours of suspenseful gameplay as the Sixers all raced to get the score first. One quick note on duplicating these cheats with emulation. I have several custom-built emulation machines that can play Tempest fairly well. I checked with both Revision 1 and Revision 1 modified hardware ROMs available on MAME. There's good news and bad news. The good news is that I verified that the cheats do work, but of the 4 or 5 times that I tried it, I was only able to get the proper score once, because the other times the game reset during gameplay. Here I am playing on MAME, trying for the 11 or 12 final score, and when the score hit 88, it did a hard reset. My guess is that the watchdog code is running more frequently in emulation, or it's just doing something different than the real hardware, as the real machine never resets like this during gameplay. Fun fact. Artemis says she's positively, absolutely sure that the 40 credit cheat will work on this machine because of the copyright date. But in reality, it's impossible to tell visually the version of the ROM installed on the machine. And if either of the later versions were installed, this cheat wouldn't have worked and Parzival would have had a pretty sad loss to the Sixers. But that wouldn't have been a very good ending for the book. I hope you enjoyed this video on Tempest and reliving some of the gaming nostalgia with me, what it was like in the arcades back in the 80s when I could play Tempest all day long with just a few quarters.